back, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Counsel, please stipulate to the presence of our jury. All right, I'll ask this.
It's been stipulated, Your Honor. They came in a different order than usual. Threw me off.
All right. So at this point, I would ask the state to please call its next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Taylor Capella to stand, please.
Good afternoon. Please step up into the witness box. Please remain standing or explain the picture on jury. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give concerning this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury? If so, please say I do. Thank you. Please state your full name, spelling your last name, and address for the record.
You can move this. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hi, Taylor. How are you doing today?
How are you?
I'm good. I think, as I explained before, when we met previously, that this courtroom was very, very difficult to hear. There's a lot of fans going on. Just keep your voice up as much as possible. And then also, if you can sit close to the microphone, that'd be great. Okay? And if you need to take a break at any time, water, whatnot, just let us know. Now, Taylor, how are you feeling today?
Nervous,
Nervous? And why are you feeling nervous?
just because it's reliving the most chaotic, traumatic day.
Now, Taylor, how old are you?
19.
And previous to today, do you recall us meeting and speaking?
Yeah.
And why did we do that?
In this case,
Did we go over your testimony? And did I tell you to just tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Did I tell you what to say to you
No.
today? Are you prepared to testify today?
yeah.
Do you go to school, and if so, where do you go?
I go to East Carolina University in North Carolina.
And other than in school, you live in Shelton, Connecticut? And who do you live there?
I live with my parents.
And what year are you in school?
I'm going into my junior year.
And what is your major?
I'm a criminal justice major.
What are you doing for the summertime? Are you out of school?
Yeah, just babysitting right now while I'm home.
And other than withdrawn, how long have you been living in Shelton for? Your whole life?
My whole life.
What high school did you attend?
Shelton High School,
And what year did you graduate Shelton High School?
2023.
Directing your attention to the year of 2022, were you a student at Shelton High School at that time?
Yes.
And what year were you?
I was a junior.
So you were a rising senior?
Yeah.
And I'm going to direct your attention specifically to May 14th of 2022. Do you remember that day and why?
I do. It was probably the worst day I've ever experienced. It was just a lot, and I lost a very close friend that day.
You can direct your attention to the nighttime hours of May 14th of 2022. Do you need a moment?
Sorry.
It's okay. Just breathe. Take a sip of water if you need to. Directing your attention to the nighttime hours of May 14th of 2022. Do you recall where you went that night?
To Tyler Rich's house.
And previous to going to Tyler Rich's house, what were you doing?
Just going in there to hang out.
Did you go anywhere before you went to Tyler Rich's house?
I was home and I was dropping my sister off somewhere, and then I went to Tyler Rich's.
And how did you know to go to Tyler Rich's house?
My boyfriend at the time called me, and I was told to go.
And who was your boyfriend at the time?
Matthew Lockovich.
Matthew Lockovich?
Mm-hmm.
And were you familiar with Tyler Rich's house? Had you been there previously?
Yeah.
About how many times previously had you been there?
Just like a handful of times, not too many.
Did you go to school with Tyler Rich?
Yeah.
Same grade?
He was a grade above me.
That night.
I drove there.
And do you recall what car you drove?
It was a BMW.
And at what time did you arrive at Tyler Rich's house on May 14th of 2022?
I'd say around 10-ish.
10 p.m.?
Yeah.
And do you recall the address that you drove to?
43 Laurel Glen.
In what town? Shelton?
Yes.
Sorry. And when you arrived at Tyler Rich's house, where did you park?
On the side of the street. I think it was on the right side.
Okay, I'm going to be showing you an exhibit, and if this exhibit does not demonstrate where you park, just let me know, okay? So State's Exhibit 49. You can see it on your little screen up there. One moment. Do you recognize this area?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recognize in States 49 the house on the left-hand side of the exhibit as being Tyler Rich's house?
Yes.
When you pulled up to Tyler Rich's house that day, and this pictures, an aerial view taken several years after the date of incident, but in this exhibit, can you indicate to members of the jury where you parked when you arrived at Tyler Rich's house?
I believe it was like on the right side where these like green, at the bottom where the green bushes are.
I'm going to use a pen indicating on State's Exhibit 49. Let me just verify if that's what it says. Yep, 49. You said the right to the bushes. Did you indicate, are you indicating these bushes right here to the bottom of the exhibit?
Yeah.
Okay, so did you park along the curb area of
Yes.
State's 49 near the bushes, or near the trees?
Mhm.
Okay. And when you arrived at Tyler Rich's house, did you go into the house?
Yeah.
Okay, and if you explain to members of the jury how you got into Tyler Rich's house.
If you go like past that in between the blue truck and the white truck, like and go all the way to the back, there were cellar doors right there.
Okay, so I'm going to show you States 9. Do you see the area? I can zoom in a little bit. Do you see the area where you went into, how you accessed and got into Tyler Rich's house that night?
Yeah, it's like through this little opening right between that tree and the bush.
Okay, so I'm pointing to States 9. I'm directing my pen. Just tell me when to stop.
Right through there.
Okay, and through this area here on States 9, you're indicating there were cellar or bilco doors there.
Yes.
And when you got into when you got to the bilco doors led into a basement area.
Yeah.
And when you got into the basement area of Tyler Rich's house, how many people did you see there?
20, 25, maybe.
And did you recognize everyone there?
Majority, some of them, yeah.
Most of them, if not all of them, attended what high school?
Shelton High School.
Was there anyone there who did not attend Shelton High School?
Not that I know of.
Can you give us some names of people that you recognized or that you saw there when you got there?
Matlock, Tyler Rich, Ricky, Fiola, Faison, Lily Lombardi, Izzy Silvis.
Did all of those individuals go to Shelton High School?
Yeah,
Did you see an individual by the name of James McGrath?
I did.
I'm showing you what's been marked as States 57. Taylor, do you recognize who this is in States 57?
Yeah, that's Jimmy.
And so you refer to him as Jimmy?
Yeah.
Now, did Jimmy go to Shelton High School?
No, we went to Fairfield Prep.
How did you know Jimmy?
Our parents were friends when we were younger.
So-
I knew him, and I was friends with Rosie as well.
And Rosie's his sister?
Yeah.
Did you hang out with Jimmy? Did you see him at other parties, even though he didn't go to Shelton High School? Did you see him quite often?
Yeah.
And were there times that you would go over to the McGrath household to see Rosie or anyone else, and would you see Jimmy there?
When I was younger, I would go over there. Yeah.
Now, when you got down with John, in looking at States, I think it was 57, in looking at States 57, and looking at what Jimmy is wearing in this photograph, do you recognize this is the outfit that he was wearing the night of May 14th, 2022?
Yeah.
Do you know where this photograph was taken?
Yeah.
Where was this photograph taken?
Nikki DeJesus' house.
Okay, and you're familiar with Nikki DeJesus?
Yeah.
How do you know Nikki DeJesus?
I used to work for Nikki's dad, and we're family friends.
Had you had occasion to go to Nikki DeJesus' house?
Yeah.
And is that the basement of his house in that photograph depicted in 57?
Yeah.
Now, when you got down, when you were in the basement of Tyler Rich's house, did you observe any drinking going on?
Yeah, some people were drinking.
Some people were drinking?
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall what they were drinking?
I would say it was just like beer or seltzers, not anything like crazy.
Were there any kegs there?
Not that I know of.
Did you drink at all when you were in the basement of Tyler Rich's house?
At the time I drove there, so I don't believe I did. It's possible I could have had one, but it would not have been any more than that.
Now, other than drinking and, withdrawn, other than drinking, was anyone doing anything else? Was there talking? Was there music being played? Were there drinking games going on?
Yeah, there was music being played. Everyone was just talking, hanging out. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary that we don't usually do.
Was there a larger crowd than normal on that night, or would you say that was pretty average?
I would say it's average. I mean, there might have been a couple more people than usual, but not by much.
When you say a couple more people, did you recognize people that were in different grades than when you were in?
Yeah.
Anyone in the grade above you or anyone in the grade below you?
It was majority the grade above me, and a couple of people maybe the year below me, but
And you had said that Tyler Rich was the grade above you,
Yeah.
so more of his friends
Right,
than
yeah.
people you associated
Yeah.
with. Now, amongst the people that you saw there in the basement, did you happen to see individuals by the name of Griffin Marcinzik and Ryan Hines?
A little later, yeah.
Okay, explain that.
I remember I was hanging out downstairs with my friend Lily and Matt. We were just talking, and then I remember they ended up coming to Tyler Rich's not too long after that. And I was told that there was a fight previously that they were involved in. That's why they were coming.
Okay, I'm going to take you a little bit back. How are you familiar with both Griffin and Ryan?
I went to high school with them. I would hang out with them on occasion.
Are they your year?
No, they're a year younger than I am.
And so you indicated just now that they arrived at the party a little bit later on. And you also indicated that you were made aware that they were in a fight.
Yep.
Without going into too much about what people said, how did you learn that they were involved in a fight?
I think people were just talking about it downstairs, and I had overheard a conversation that was going on.
To your knowledge, do you know how Ryan and Griffin arrived at Tyler Rich's house, how they got there?
I believe Charlie Connery picked him up.
Charlie Connery. So when you arrived at Tyler Rich's house, was Charlie there?
I believe so, yeah.
So at some point, to your knowledge, did Charlie leave to go pick up those two boys?
Yeah.
Now, you had said that you had heard they were involved in a fight. At some point at the party, were you standing close enough to Ryan and Griffin to overhear, without going into what they said, but to overhear what they were talking about regarding this fight?
No.
To your knowledge, at that point, you may know now, but at that point, did you know where that fight had occurred previously?
No.
And to your knowledge, at that time, did you know who they were fighting with at the party previously?
No, I don't think so.
Do you know if the people they were fighting with were members of Shelton High School or a different school?
I knew it was at St. Joe's kids. I didn't know who exactly.
Okay. So you gained knowledge that the people that they were fighting, Griffin and Ryan Hines were fighting, were from St. Joe's. Do you know how many individuals they were fighting with?
Not at the time, I didn't know.
You learned that later? Now, at some point, did you learn what St. Joe's kids were involved in the fight?
Yeah.
And if you can name those individuals.
Tyler Da Silva, Jack Snyder, and Raul Valle.
Now, are you familiar with Tyler Da Silva?
Yeah.
And how are you familiar with Tyler Da Silva?
I think we were at a party one time together.
And Jack Snyder, how are you familiar with Jack Snyder?
I just know of him. I don't know too much about him.
And had you ever sid him at a previous party before?
Jack Snyder, no.
And Raul Valle, are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
And how are you familiar with him?
I think we were at a party one time together.
Did you ever have any previous conversation with Raul Valle? Do you happen to see, well, withdrawn. Does Raul Valle go by a different name that you know of? Excuse me?
Lido?
And were you introduced to him as Lido?
Yeah, that's how I knew of him, yeah.
On a previous occasion? Do you happen to see the individual here today in court?
Yeah.
Can you please point him out and describe what he's wearing?
Over there in a black suit.
Let the record reflect, Your Honor, the witness, rather, is identifying the defendant in court.
Record can reflect that the witness has identified Mr. Valle. Thank you.
Taylor, at some point while you were inside the basement, did you hear something that prompted you to go outside?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you hear?
The first time?
Yes.
So I was outside the first time because it was hot in the basement. So I had went outside, and that's when the car drove by the first time.
Okay, so just so I can understand you, so you're indicating that at some point you left the basement area and went outside because it was hot?
Yeah.
While you were standing outside, were you withdrawn? Were you outside with anyone else when you went outside?
I think I was with Matt.
Matt Lockovich?
Yeah.
Were you the only two outside at that point?
I think there were other people outside towards the front. I was still by the cellar doors at the time.
And you just indicated that you heard or saw a car drive up or drive by. Explain that.
So at that time I had heard about the fight, and we were by the cellar doors, and people were talking towards the front, and Matt had walked over there. So I had followed him a little bit towards the front of the yard, and that's when the car drove by.
So I'm going to refer you to behind you. Actually, let me see. So behind you states 52. May I approach you, Mr. Honor? Taylor, if you could take the pointer that you have there next to you. If you can just direct and point, show the members of the jury where you and Matt Lockovich were standing when you came outside to observe the vehicle.
It was a little cut off, but it was like right probably by this truck over here.
Okay. And when you say cut off,
court will take the information on the record. Thank you.
Now, Taylor, are you able to name the other individuals that you saw as you indicated on State 52, in the grassy area approaching the vehicle?
I think it was just Ricky Fiola, Tyler Rich are the only really two I remember going up there.
And do you recall what type of vehicle pulled up?
Honda Pilot.
I'm going to be showing you what's been marked as States 30. Taylor, does States 30 resemble, or is that the vehicle that pulled up in front of Tyler Rich's house that night?
Yeah.
And explain what the lighting was during that time. Were you able to see clearly? Obviously, it was nighttime, but were there any lights that were illuminating the area?
It was dark outside, but it wasn't dark to the point where you couldn't see who was in front of you. There was lights in the driveway, flashlights.
And when you say flashlights, do you mean people had their phones?
Yeah,
used
like
the
from
lights
your
on their
phone. Yeah.
Now, how many individuals were withdrawn? At some point, when you saw this vehicle pull up, did you notice anyone else from inside the basement coming outside to approach the vehicle?
I think maybe a couple people might have come outside. I don't know exactly who.
From where you were standing, did you ever leave that area to get closer to the vehicle, or did you stay in that location?
I stayed out there for maybe a couple seconds and then went back inside after that.
So from your vantage point, were you able to see how many individuals approached the vehicle?
No.
Were you able to hear anything from what was being said from the people that were outside the vehicle or anyone from inside the vehicle?
No.
Were you able to see who was inside the vehicle at this point?
Not at that point.
Did you get a sense at all of what the vibe was or the atmosphere was when you witnessed the Shelton kids from the basement coming outside and approaching the car?
It didn't seem like they were like extremely mad or trying to cause a problem. It's not like they came sprinting outside and chasing after the car. They walked out of the basement casually and went up to the car, or went up to the front yard at least, walking.
And you couldn't hear anything that was being said? And you said you stayed outside for a couple of seconds?
Yeah.
And then you went back into the basement? And why did you do that?
I didn't see a need to stay outside. Went back inside.
At some point, did you learn of who was in that Honda Pilot?
Yeah.
And from what you were made aware, who was in the Honda Pilot?
Tyler Da Silva, Jack Snyder, and Lito.
Anyone else that you know who was in that pilot?
Not that I know for sure.
And at some point, withdrawn, you said you had gone into the basement. Did you see the vehicle leave that area at any point before you went back into the basement?
No, I don't think I saw it leave. No.
And at any point in time, did you go back outside?
I did.
Okay. And why did you go back outside?
People started going outside. I am pretty sure that someone said something that like caused me to go outside. I can't recall exactly. And I went outside, and that was when people started walking up the street. And I started walking up there as well.
Okay. So I'm going to take you back a little bit. So you had said you went back outside. At any point in time, did you see the Honda Pilot driving up and down the street?
No.
Okay. When you went back outside after something prompted you to go out there, you indicated that you saw people walking down the street. What people walking down the street?
Like the Shelton, the kids that were at Tyler Rich's.
Can you recall who was walking down the street?
Tyler Rich, maybe Matt, Ricky, and those are the only ones I really know for sure.
And you then indicated you started walking down the street.
Yeah.
I'm going to be showing you, may I approach the witness, Your Honor? States 1. Have your pointer still there. If you can indicate to members of the jury, actually stay seated if it's easier. So if the red dot here is Tyler Rich's house, you walk out the driveway. How far down Laurel Glen Drive? Hold on. Did the vehicle drive down Laurel Glen towards farmhouse? Yep. How far down Laurel Glen did you go? I really got to the right. Okay. So let's
there were some people standing and sitting on the side of the road, but I couldn't tell you.
Did you see any of the Shelton high school kids, anyone from the party running after the vehicle?
No.
Taylor, I'm going to be showing you what's been marked as States 44. I'm going to ask you if you've seen this video before. Just play it in its entirety. Now, Taylor, have you seen this video that's depicted in States 44 previous to today?
Yeah.
Okay. And from your recollection of what you observed on that night, did you see any of that happening from your vantage point?
No, I think they might have already been up there when I started walking. I didn't see that.
So the kids that you saw running up after the vehicle, you don't personally remember seeing that?
No.
Okay. And did you hear in States 44 something being thrown at the vehicle?
Yeah.
Do you recall seeing or hearing that? Previous to the car leaving Laurel Glen in front of Tyler Rich's house, do you recall any things being thrown at the vehicle or things being thrown out of the vehicle from where you were standing before you went back into the basement?
Yeah. I remember things were being thrown from the car at the car. It was just like a both way thing.
And is that before the car drove down Laurel Glen? Now, how long would you say you were in the area you depicted in States, I believe it was 52, where you indicated you walked up towards the vehicle? How long did you stay in that area for?
Like probably not even 3 seconds, and then I turned around and walked back.
Did you have any interaction with anyone other than maybe your boyfriend at the time?
No.
And when you came back, withdrawn. When you came back down towards Tyler Rich's house, who were you with at that point?
I went back inside, so I was with everyone who was in the basement.
Did you walk back alone, or did Matt?
I walked back with
Okay.
everyone.
And so, to your knowledge, did Matt Lockovich stay up there?
Yeah, because he wasn't in the basement when I was. But I wasn't even for sure that he was up there. I assumed he was up there because a bunch of Ricky and Tyler are his friends, so I assumed he was up there. So that's why I started walking up there. I didn't get that far, and then I turned around. He wasn't in the basement, so I was assuming that he was up there.
Why did you walk up there in the first place?
Because I thought he was up there.
You thought Matt was
Yeah,
up
I thought
there?
Matt was up there.
And were you concerned for him? Why were you going up there were you curious?
I was just curious, concerned why he was going up there, so I walked up there.
When you came back down to go back towards Tyler Rich's house, did you encounter anyone at that point before you got back into the basement?
Not that I remember, no.
When you approached the house, was there anyone standing on the front lawn at that point?
I think there were a couple people in the front yard. I couldn't tell you who. I don't remember.
At some point, you got back into the basement. When you got back into the basement, who did you recognize in the basement at this point?
Lily was there. My friend Izzy was down there. A couple other girls that I was talking to.
When you say Lily, Lily's last name?
Lombardi.
And Izzy?
Silvis.
Anyone else that you saw down there?
There were people older than me Michaela Holton was down there.
Do you recall if Jimmy was there?
Jimmy was down there, yeah.
Okay. And at some point, did you have a conversation with Jimmy?
I did.
Okay. And tell me the gist of the conversation. Without telling us what he said, what did you tell him, if anything?
We were just talking at that point about his girlfriend and how happy he was with her. And he just was saying how he loves her and he's he's been so happy recently with her. That's really part of the conversation.
At some point after seeing what you saw when you first went out to see the car, as well as observing what you did when you went down Laurel Glen, did you think something bad was going to happen?
Yeah.
And what did you think was going to happen?
At this point, they've driven by multiple times, and everyone was talking about it. So I figured that there was going to be an altercation, maybe of some sort. I don't know, like not physically, but maybe verbally or something along the lines.
At some point, did Matt Lockovich come back into the basement area?
Yeah.
Did you at any point tell Matt Lockovich as well as Jimmy McGrath anything at that point?
Yeah. So then I started talking to both of them, and I was telling them that if an altercation were to happen, to just stay out of it. You know, don't get involved. It's not your problem. And that's what Jimmy did. So.
Okay. And why did you find the need to tell them that?
I just know it was mainly towards Matt. I know Jimmy wouldn't get involved. He wasn't that type of person. Matt, just, I know if his friends were in an altercation, he wouldn't just stand there and let it happen.
Now, at some point, did you go back outside and see this Honda Pilot again?
Yeah.
And when and how did you come to see this Honda Pilot again?
So then everyone started going outside, and I went outside with them, and that's when I walked out, and Lito and Tyler were on the yard fighting with everyone.
So I'm going to be showing you what's been marked as... Well, explain to members of the jury, when you walked out, when you walked back out the Bilko doors,
Yeah.
when you walked back out the Bilko doors, what area of the yard did you go to? And it was,
The front yard.
okay. So I'm going to be showing you what's been marked as States 3. Is this a good representation of where you were standing when you came back outside?
Yeah, actually, like basically where I was standing, yeah.
Okay. And if you can explain to members of the jury where in Stage 3 you were standing, and I can use the pen again if you just want to direct me to where, because I know if you point on your screen, the jurors can't see it. Can you see my pen?
Yeah.
Can you direct me to go to the left or the right?
I go,
Back?
yeah, back a little bit, and like, honestly, right there.
Okay. So let the record reflect, Your Honor, that the witness is identifying with the state's assistance that she was standing to the bottom, pretty much middle section of Stage 3.
My record will reflect. Thank you.
Now, Taylor, you said that when you came outside, you were standing in that area as indicated in Stage 3. You indicated you saw the pilot?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what did you see in conjunction with seeing the pilot?
It was just parked on the street, like near the mailbox a little bit. Kind of like, the mailbox would be like where the car's in the center, if that makes sense. Like, the mailbox would separate half the car was in the front of it and half the car was back.
So showing you Stage 5, I know this is a daytime picture, but can you indicate on Stage 5 where you observed the Honda Pilot pull up?
It came from, it was like kind of, it would be more in front of this picture a little bit, like probably right by the basketball hoop.
Okay, so this area here?
Yeah.
No, you can't probably see. So, is that a little bit better?
Yeah, I would say like right there.
Okay. So Your Honor, let's record reflect that the witness is identifying that the pilot pulled up to the left-hand bottom side of Stage 5 towards the, a little bit off from the curve area of Stage 5.
Noted. Thank you.
So Taylor, when you saw the pilot as indicated in Stage 5 where it parked, what, if anything, did you see after it parked?
That's when Lito and Tyler De Silva had gotten out of the car.
And where did you observe them going when they got out of the vehicle?
Onto the grass.
And at that point, did you have anything blocking your view? How was the lighting?
There was flashlights on. Again, the garage had the light on it. So I could see clearly. There wasn't a lot of people standing in front of me, so I did have a clear view, yes.
You had indicated you were familiar with both Tyler De Silva and Lito, with the defendant. Do you recall what they were wearing that night?
They were both kind of wearing the same color. I'd say it was like a lighter blue, probably like the color of this, maybe a little lighter.
Were you able to clearly identify at that point with the lighting and where you were standing who was who?
Yeah.
Do you recall, if you can, where was the defendant standing and where was Tyler De Silva standing? And I don't know if Stage 3, if you'd rather me use Stage 3, or if there's a different exhibit that you think would help you out here.
I would say Tyler De Silva was up closer to the, like on the grass near the bush. And Lito was behind him farther towards the road more.
Okay, so you're indicating here that, say that again, please?
That Tyler De Silva was up more, like towards the bush a little bit.
Okay.
On the grass, sorry. Maybe up a little more. Yeah, like right over there. And then Lito was behind him.
Behind him, so even further over here.
It's like a little dark. I can't really see if that's still.
Why don't you give her the exhibit and let her take a look at it over here? Perhaps she could point it out.
Would this exhibit help better? States 5.
Yeah. So they ran up onto the grass, and then Tyler De Silva was closer to the red bush. Right, yeah, over the, like closer to that bush, and then Lito would be behind him, so closer to the road.
Okay, so more towards this area.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you came out and you observed Tyler De Silva and the defendant, what did you observe them doing?
When I came out to the point, they were fighting at that point. They were in the fight at that point.
When you say they, who's they?
Tyler De Silva and Lito were fighting the Shelton kids.
When you say the Shelton kids, can you recall from where you were standing, or were you able to observe from where you were standing, who from the Shelton kids, who from the house came out to fight?
A bunch of us were out there, kind of just standing there, like most of us were just watching. I believe Alex Bernstein was near Tyler De Silva, and I'm not sure who Lito was fighting with at that point.
Is it fair to say that when you came out, well, with John, is it your testimony that when you came out, the fight was already in progress? Okay. So is it fair to say that you did not have any kind of firsthand knowledge about who threw the first punch or how the fight started? And explain as much as you can when the fight started, or when you came out and saw the fight, what was going on? What was the environment?
It was just chaotic and a lot going on at that point. People just standing there, some of them fighting. Everyone was kind of just everywhere at that point.
Were all the Shelton kids fighting, or were some observing?
No, a majority were watching. I think only a couple kids were fighting at that time.
And who were you standing around when this fight was occurring?
I was next to Michaela Holton.
Michaela Holton? And who's Michaela Holton to you?
She's one of my friends. She's friends with my sister. They cheered together.
Was she dating anyone who was involved in this fight, or who was there?
Yeah, Andrew.
Andrew.
I don't know how to say his last name. Starts with an M.
Was he Mr. Letus?
Yeah.
Was he present there as well? And do you recall seeing Tyler De Silva during this fight?
Yeah.
Do you recall seeing the defendant during this fight?
Yeah.
And at any time during the fight, did you hear anything about a knife?
Yes.
And if you could please explain to members of the jury what you heard at that point.
I heard Charlie Connery screaming, "He has a knife, he has a knife."
And are you familiar with Charlie Connery?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with his voice?
Yeah.
Were you able to tell it was him? And when you heard he has a knife, what was going through your head?
I was just like, oh my God, what's going on? Are you talking about he has a knife?
Did you know who he was referring to when you heard he has a knife?
Well, that's at the point where I saw, a couple seconds after that is when the defendant was near. Sorry.
It's okay. Take a second.
The defendant was near Jimmy, and he was lunging towards him. And I just saw him go up to Jimmy. And Jimmy stays there for like 2 seconds. And I looked over and saw Tommy with, there was a flashlight pointing down on Tommy's leg. And he had blood all over his leg. And I looked back at Jimmy, and at that point his shorts were just all bloody. And I just stood there. I didn't know what to do.
Okay, Taylor. I know this is really difficult. I'm going to have to take you through it a little bit just so you can give some more detail about what you saw, okay? So you indicated that you heard Charlie Connery indicate he's got a knife, he's got a knife.
Yeah.
And at some point you indicated you had realized that some of the Shelton kids had gotten stabbed. Is that right? And who did you become aware that got stabbed?
At first, it was Tommy that I was aware of.
Okay. Who else did you become aware that got stabbed?
At that point, I didn't know anyone else. I didn't see anyone else.
At some point during the night, did you learn that other people had gotten stabbed?
Yes.
Who were those individuals?
Ryan Hines, Faison Teal, Jimmy McGrath, and Tommy Connery.
And did you personally see Tommy, Ryan, or Faison get stabbed?
No.
May I approach the clerk, Your Honor? Taylor, who did you see first with injuries?
Tommy.
And then whose injuries did you see after that?
And I looked at Jimmy.
And you realized what happened to him? And then who did you see after that?
Then it was Faison.
And then at some point did you realize Ryan had been stabbed?
I don't think I saw Ryan at like the rest before that. I think I saw him once the ambulance got there, then I saw Ryan.
And do you recall observing who those individuals, other than Jimmy, were fighting with? Meaning, who was Tommy fighting with? Who was Faison fighting with? Who was Ryan fighting with? Were they fighting with the defendant or were they fighting with Tyler DeSilva?
The defendant.
The defendant. And you personally observed that?
I just remember them being closer to the defendant.
And did you see Jimmy fighting with Tyler DeSilva at all?
Not at all.
And did you see Jimmy fighting with the defendant at any point?
Not at all.
Was Jimmy involved in the fight at all? What was he doing during the fight?
Standing there?
Standing there? Would you characterize as him just observing?
Yeah.
And at some point, did you see where the defendant went? So after you saw the fight break out, did you see the defendant go anywhere at that point?
So he went to the car. I remember him going to the car and coming back.
When you observed him going to the car, explain what you saw.
He got like, shoved into the road and goes up to the Honda Pilot, comes back onto the grass, and that's...
I'm going to show you State 62. Does this look familiar to you? Is this what you recollect seeing the night that the defendant went back to the vehicle?
Yeah.
And how long would you say he was back in that vehicle for?
Not long. A couple seconds, maybe.
And after you saw the defendant at the vehicle, if you could explain what you saw him do next. And if you can take it as slow as possible and describe as much as you saw, it'd be very helpful.
So at that point is when he comes back onto the grass. And I don't know if he like slipped or turned. He spins to his, I want to say it was his left. And then he takes his arm and goes like up to Jimmy.
So Taylor, I'm going to have you stand up. Your Honor, if I just may have the witness demonstrate what she observed. Okay. So Taylor, if I'm Jimmy, okay, where were you in relation to where you saw Jimmy?
Probably a little farther back, but diagonally, just like this.
So if I move back a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. And so where was the defendant positioned to where you saw Jimmy?
Like right there.
Okay. And if you can demonstrate, and Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness is pointing to her left-hand side towards members of the jury as to where the defendant was standing. She indicated that Jimmy McGrath was standing to the defendant's left-hand side and directly in front of her.
Record will reflect.
So if you can please just indicate, just show members of the jury what you observed the defendant do with his arms and the motion he used in doing what he did to James McGrath.
So, with his right arm, I remember he turns and just like kind of goes like upwards towards Jimmy.
The record reflects on the witness is turning using her right hand and making an upward motion, indicating that the defendant was making an upward motion into Jimmy McGrath.
We will note that on the record. Thank you.
So Taylor, when you saw the defendant come back from the vehicle and come back around, and as you said, turned around and made that motion up into Jimmy, did you see what he was holding in his hand?
I couldn't see exactly.
Can you describe or show us what he was doing with his hand? Was it open? Was it closed?
It was in a fist, and you could tell, obviously, that there was something in his hand.
And when he came back around to use whatever was in his fist to go into Jimmy, what was Jimmy doing at that point?
He kind of just like he was backing up, and like his hands kind of were up, and he just like is walking backwards a little bit. He takes like a step back.
When the defendant came back from the vehicle and came back around, did you observe him swinging the knife at random people, or did you observe him coming and making a beeline for Jimmy?
He came right for Jimmy.
Did he have purpose in going towards him?
It looked like it.
Did he say anything when he was lunging towards Jimmy?
Not that I remember.
And at that point, did you realize what he had just done?
Yeah.
And if you can indicate to the members of the jury what you observed Jimmy do next after you saw the defendant stab him.
He kind of just stood there for a second, and just like falls down onto the ground. And you can see he had those white shorts on. You could just see them all covered in blood.
And after you saw that, what, if anything, did you do?
I didn't know what to do. I literally froze. And then everyone kind of was looking around, seeing that everyone was at this point that Faison had actually come up to me. And I saw his arm, and it was just like a chunk of Faison, like his like fat tissue was coming out of his arm, and he was like, can you tie this? And I'm not good with blood, so I was like, Faison, I'm so sorry, like I really can't help you. And someone else ended up helping him, and then that's when I ended up calling my mom, and then I called my dad, and he ended up coming.
At any point before you saw Jimmy get stabbed, or as you saw Jimmy get stabbed, did you hear him say anything?
No, not that I remember Jimmy saying anything.
And who were you with while withdrawn? Was anyone around you? Were you tending to anyone other than, like you indicated, Faison when this was happening?
No, just Faison.
Where was Michaela Holton at this point?
I think she walked backwards. At that point, I think I was standing by myself. I was so focused on what just happened, I really don't remember.
After you noticed what happened to Jimmy, after you saw Faison's injuries, when did you realize Tommy had also gotten stabbed?
There was a flashlight pointing down on Tommy's leg. So I guess it was, after that I saw Tommy, and everyone was kind of trying to tie like a tourniquet, I guess you could say, onto his leg with like shirts that the guys had on.
After Jimmy was stabbed, after all the boys were stabbed, did you see where the defendant and Tyler DeSilva went?
Back into the Honda Pilot.
You saw that with your own eyes?
I don't remember who exactly running back into the Honda Pilot, though.
And what did you see the Honda Pilot do?
It drove down towards Adams Drive.
And at some point you indicated you had called your parents. Did at another point, at some point too, police arrive and EMS arrive?
Yeah.
Were you outside when this was happening?
Yeah.
And did your parents come to the scene as well?
My dad ended up coming with my sister.
And did you go home right away when your dad showed up?
I think we stood there for a good amount of time, and then I ended up going home.
Did you talk to the police that night?
No, I
At
didn't.
what point did you talk to the police, do you recall?
I want to believe it was that. I want to say the day, maybe not the day after, maybe that Monday. Yeah, maybe like 2 days after.
Was it once or more than once?
It was more than once.
And Taylor, at any time the night of May 14th of 2022, did you see Jimmy McGrath fighting with the defendant?
No.
At any time the night of that party, did you see Jimmy McGrath fighting with anyone?
No.
At any time that night, did you see Jimmy McGrath with a weapon?
No.
Did you see any of the Shelton kids with weapons?
No.
Taylor, you personally observed and witnessed a friend of yours get stabbed, fatally stabbed, and witnessed the stabbing of other friends of yours. How has this affected you mentally?
I've gone to therapy for it. Therapy nights, even at school, at college, that I would have like nightmares of this, and I'd call my mom, like hyperventilating, because it's just like and even after the event happened, it just replays in my head, and it's just hard to know that he wasn't even doing anything. And this happened. I've gotten really bad. I've always had anxiety, but I think it's increased definitely after this. I don't know, it's a lot. And I've obviously, like I said, gone to therapy for it because I didn't know what else to do. Traumatic.
You have a moment, Your Honor?
No, that's good. I don't know if she's gonna want to break for the day or what. You want to have a sidebar? See what she wants to do.
Can we have a sidebar? Further questions, Your Honor?
Alright, so at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the court is prepared to adjourn for the day. We'll finish cross-examination and the remainder of this witness's testimony on Monday, hopefully. So I just want to remind you of your obligation to abide by your rules of fair conduct. You're going home for a long weekend. There is a lot of media coverage. Please do your best to avoid that media coverage. People that you are going home to will also be curious to know more of what's going on, possibly talk to you. Please remember that you're not allowed to speak to anyone regarding it. Please greet each other. Have a nice weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday to continue with the evidence. Thank you. Court is adjourned.
All right, so court's adjourned.